Imagine a small village in the far north, where the cold winds never rest and the sea roars endlessly. In that village, a child is born, the son of a simple fisherman. His life is filled with hardship, yet within him burns an incredible flame of genius. He loves to read, to learn, to understand the world around him. No obstacle can stop his thirst for knowledge. One day, this very child will change not only the destiny of Russia, but also the history of world science and literature. His name is Mikhail Lomonosov, a poet and playwright who breathed life into Russian literature, a chemist and physicist who revealed the hidden laws of nature, a thinker who built bridges between poetry and science, reason and faith, art and discovery. Thanks to him, the Russian language found its structure, Russian poetry found its rhythm, and Russian science found its foundation. In this video, we will explore Lomonosov's journey, from his humble childhood in the frozen north, through his relentless pursuit of education, to his studies in Germany, his role in founding Moscow University, and the legacy of his immortal works. Join us as we uncover the story of a boy who rose from a remote fishing village to become one of the greatest minds the world has ever known. Fact 1. His birthplace. In the cold autumn of 1711, in a remote and rugged village of northern Russia, a child was born. His name was Mikhail Lomonosov. He came into the world in Denisovka, a small village in the Arkhangelsk province, into the family of a humble fisherman. The village lay close to the sea. Life there was harsh, but nature was magnificent. Long winters, icy winds, crashing waves, and snow-covered forests painted the backdrop of his childhood. From a very young age, Lomonosov was curious and eager to learn. He constantly asked questions and grabbed every chance he could to read whatever books came his way. His world was divided between two extremes: the tough, simple life of the northern fisherman and the breathtaking beauty of the nature surrounding him. It's hard to imagine that from such a cold and humble village, a boy would one day rise to transform science and literature, enrich the Russian language, and leave an eternal mark on human knowledge. Denisovka was not just his birthplace. It was the soil that nourished his dreams, his talent, and the very first seeds of his genius. Fact 2. Early childhood and education. Mikhail Lomonosov's childhood unfolded in the cold and harsh environment of Denisovka village in the far north of Russia. Born into a fisherman's family, his life was shaped by the strict laws of nature, freezing winds, endless snow, and the powerful roar of the sea. Yet from an early age, young Lomonosov showed an insatiable curiosity for learning. He constantly observed the world around him, asking questions and seeking answers wherever he could find them. The small village school couldn't satisfy his thirst for knowledge. Books became his treasures, and every written page opened a new door to the unknown. The harshness of northern life forged his character, teaching him endurance, patience, and discipline. The icy winters and the struggle of daily survival strengthened his will, while his hunger for knowledge pushed him beyond the boundaries of his small world. Despite the limited opportunities of rural life, Lomonosov dreamed of more. He decided to leave his village, first heading to Moscow and later to Germany, to pursue science and literature at the highest level. These early years were the foundation of everything he would later become: a great scientist, poet, and one of the most important figures in the development of the Russian language. Denisovka was not merely his birthplace, it was the cradle of his dreams, the first chapter of a life that would change Russian history forever. Fact 3. Scientific education in Germany. At a young age, Mikhail Lomonosov set out on a long and daring journey to expand his scientific knowledge and worldview. Though born a humble village boy, he carried within him an unquenchable hunger for discovery and a burning desire to learn. In 1736, he traveled to Germany, where he studied at the universities of Marburg and Freiburg. His goal was not simply to earn a degree. Lomonosov wanted to dive deeply into the worlds of chemistry, physics, metallurgy, and natural sciences. The years he spent in Germany became a turning point in his life. He didn't just study theoretical concepts. He also absorbed the European approach to scientific experimentation, learning how to think critically and work systematically in laboratories. Countless hours spent conducting experiments, writing notes, and observing reactions sharpened his mind and strengthened his discipline. Germany also opened his eyes to European culture, language, and philosophy. He learned how science and art could coexist, how reason and creativity could fuel one another. These experiences shaped his unique way of thinking, a balance between scientific precision and poetic imagination. The education Lomonosov received in Germany was instrumental in shaping both the scientist and the poet within him. He didn't just bring back knowledge to Russia, he brought a new spirit of enlightenment, ready to guide his homeland toward progress. His years in Germany transformed him from a poor northern boy into one of the greatest intellectuals the world would ever know. Fact 4. Enriching the Russian language and contributing to literature. Mikhail Lomonosov was not only a brilliant scientist, he was also one of the most important figures in the history of the Russian language and literature. In the mid-18th century, the Russian language was still in a state of transition. There was a wide gap between spoken and written forms, and no clear linguistic standard existed. Lomonosov recognized this problem and devoted himself to elevating and systematizing the Russian language, making it suitable for both scientific and artistic expression. He created rules of grammar and style, introduced new words and structures, and proved that complex scientific and philosophical ideas could be written in Russian, not only in Latin or French, as was common at the time. Thanks to his efforts, Russian became not just a language of everyday speech, but also a language of science, art, and intellect. As a poet and playwright, Lomonosov brought fresh energy to Russian literature. Influenced by European classics, he adapted those traditions into a distinctly Russian poetic voice. His odes, filled with emotion, grandeur, and vivid imagery, celebrated nature, reason, and the human spirit. He also wrote dramas that introduced new genres to Russian theater, helping shape the foundation for future generations of writers. Through his literary works, Lomonosov demonstrated that a boy born in a remote northern village could transform an entire nation's culture. He bridged the worlds of science and poetry, intellect, and beauty. In the end, Lomonosov didn't just enrich the Russian language, he gave it identity, structure, and soul, turning it into a powerful medium for both artistic and scientific thought. Fact 5. Discoveries in chemistry and physics. Mikhail Lomonosov was not just a poet and linguist, he was one of Russia's greatest scientists, whose groundbreaking research in chemistry and physics left a lasting impact on the scientific world. His experiments, theories, and insights shaped the foundations of modern science long before many of these concepts were fully recognized in Europe. Lomonosov's fascination with science began in his youth, but it was during his studies in Germany that he developed a true experimental mindset. Yet his ultimate goal was not to remain abroad. It was to bring that knowledge back to Russia and transform his homeland into a center of learning and innovation. One of his most important achievements was his early formulation of the law of conservation of matter. Lomonosov demonstrated through meticulous experiments that matter does not disappear or vanish, it merely changes form. This principle, which later became fundamental to modern chemistry, was among the first of its kind in scientific history. His experiments proved that during chemical reactions, the total mass of substances remains constant, an idea that would later be echoed by Antoine Lavoisier, earning Lomonosov recognition as one of the true pioneers of physical chemistry. He also conducted in-depth research on thermodynamics, gas motion, and the laws of heat. Spending long hours in his laboratory, Lomonosov carefully studied how temperature, pressure, and matter interacted. His observations on the movement of air, the diffusion of heat, and molecular reactions were far ahead of his time, bridging the gap between chemistry and physics. In metallurgy, Lomonosov explored how metals behaved under heat, how they melted, and how their properties could be improved for practical use. These studies directly contributed to the early stages of industrial and technological development in Russia, helping to modernize the country's production methods. Lomonosov also turned his attention to the atmosphere and weather phenomena. He was among the first to study how clouds form, how rain develops, and how heat moves through the air. His work on optics, light, and color revealed his ability to connect natural laws into a unified vision of the physical world. But Lomonosov was not just a theorist. He was a visionary builder of science. He established one of Russia's first laboratories, trained young scientists, and promoted independent experimental thinking. His passion for teaching and research created an entirely new generation of Russian scholars who followed in his footsteps. Through his tireless work, Mikhail Lomonosov didn't just expand the frontiers of chemistry and physics, he built the foundation of Russian science itself. From a small northern village to the grand halls of discovery, he proved that curiosity and perseverance could transform not only a single life, but the destiny of an entire nation. Fact 6. Research on the atmosphere and space. Lomonosov's curiosity was never limited to what happened on Earth. His eyes and his mind reached far beyond, toward the skies, the stars, and the unseen worlds of the cosmos. In the 18th century, knowledge about outer space was still in its infancy. Humanity barely understood how the universe worked. But for Lomonosov, this mystery wasn't something to fear. It was a door waiting to be opened. At night, after long hours in his laboratory, he would step outside and gaze at the heavens. Every star, every flicker of light fascinated him. He believed there was a hidden connection between the atmosphere, the air, and the greater universe. An idea that was bold and revolutionary for his time. Determined to uncover this connection, he began studying the nature of the atmosphere, the pressure of air, the movement of clouds, and the refraction of light. One of his greatest achievements came in 1761, during the transit of Venus across the Sun. As he carefully observed the event through his telescope, Lomonosov noticed a thin ring of light surrounding the planet's edge. This faint glow, as he correctly concluded, was proof that Venus has its own atmosphere. It was a historic discovery. Until then, scientists believed only Earth possessed an atmosphere. This single observation forever engraved Lomonosov's name in the history of astronomy. He didn't just record what he saw, he transformed scientific understanding. By discovering the atmosphere of Venus, he showed that the universe was far more complex and potentially more hospitable to life than anyone had imagined. Lomonosov also conducted countless experiments on Earth's atmosphere. He studied air pressure changes, cloud formation, and the processes behind rain and snow. At a time when meteorology was still an undeveloped science, Lomonosov was already laying its foundations. He envisioned the atmosphere as a living, breathing organism, constantly moving, transforming, and governed by its own natural laws. Through his studies of the skies, Mikhail Lomonosov bridged the gap between Earth and the cosmos. He proved that true science knows no boundaries, and that the same curiosity that drives a child to gaze at the stars can lead humanity to uncover the deepest secrets of the universe. Fact 7. Lomonosov as a mosaic artist and painter. English. Mikhail Lomonosov's genius was not confined to science. He was also a man of deep artistic passion. To him, art and science were not separate worlds, but two expressions of the same creative spirit. During his years abroad, especially in Germany and Italy, Lomonosov discovered the art of mosaic making. The ancient Roman and Byzantine mosaics he saw fascinated him with their beauty, symbolism, and timeless craftsmanship. He came to believe that mosaics were not just decoration, they were a way to express the depth of the human soul through color and light. After returning to Russia, Lomonosov founded the first mosaic workshop in St. Petersburg. There he personally created artworks made from thousands of tiny pieces of colored glass. But his approach was far from ordinary. He used his knowledge of chemistry to experiment with glass composition, melting points, and pigmentation, searching for the perfect brightness and durability of color. His work beautifully combined the precision of a scientist with the imagination of an artist. One of his greatest creations was a monumental mosaic portrait of Peter the Great, Pyotr. This masterpiece was not just a royal image. It symbolized the strength, wisdom, and scientific awakening of Russia itself. Through the sparkling glass, Lomonosov sought to capture the spirit of his nation and its boundless potential. Lomonosov once said, "Art is also a science. Art without science is like a body without a soul." This quote perfectly reflected his worldview. He believed that true beauty emerges only when art and knowledge unite. His pioneering work ignited a new era in Russian mosaic and decorative arts, inspiring generations of artists after him. Today, his mosaics are not merely artistic relics. They are living reflections of a mind where science and art existed in perfect harmony. Fact 8. Founder of Moscow University. In the mid-18th century, Russian science was still in its infancy. Education was scarce, most of the population was illiterate, and knowledge was seen as a privilege for the nobility. But one man dreamed of changing that darkness: Mikhail Lomonosov. He was the son of a poor fisherman, yet through the power of learning, he rose to greatness. Lomonosov knew that if science remained the property of the rich, the nation could never advance. Deep inside him burned a vision: to make knowledge accessible to every Russian. From his youth, he had admired the universities of Europe. While studying at the University of Marburg in Germany, he saw how freely students debated ideas and conducted experiments in laboratories. This inspired him to ask, why can't we have such institutions in Russia? Why must our youth travel abroad to learn? These questions haunted him for years. When he returned to St. Petersburg, he had a plan: to create Russia's first great university for the people. But the road ahead was difficult. At that time, Empress Elizabeth Petrovna ruled Russia, and any new initiative required imperial approval. When Lomonosov presented his proposal for a university, many dismissed it as a foolish dream. A university for the common people? They laughed. Still, Lomonosov did not give up. Together with the young nobleman Ivan Shuvalov, he appealed directly to the Empress, explaining why education was essential for the nation's progress. His words were not just a proposal, they were a call to awaken the spirit of a country. He said, "Science frees people. Where there is no science, the people learn only to obey, not to think." Empress Elizabeth was deeply moved by his vision. On January 25, 1755, she signed the decree that officially established Moscow University. It was the greatest triumph of Lomonosov's life. That day, January 25, 1755, became a symbol of new beginnings in Russian history. It was later celebrated as Tatiana's Day, the National Students' Day of Russia. But Lomonosov didn't just give the university its name, he shaped its soul. He personally designed its faculties, study programs, and teaching system. Most importantly, he insisted that admission should be open not only to nobles, but also to talented young men from poor families. A revolutionary idea for that time. Lomonosov's dream wasn't just to educate people. He wanted to spark free thought, scientific curiosity, in a culture of discussion in his homeland. He called the university the cradle of national consciousness. Decades later, his university became the birthplace of countless scientists, writers, and inventors. In 1940, it was officially renamed Lomonosov Moscow State University, MGU, in his honor. Today, it stands as one of the world's most prestigious educational institutions. And every student who walks past its great building remembers one truth: this place was once the dream of a poor fisherman's son. Mikhail Lomonosov proved that to create greatness, one doesn't need wealth, only vision, courage, and an unbreakable will. Fact 9. Mikhail Lomonosov's faith, a bridge between science and religion. Mikhail Lomonosov was not only a scientist, he was also a man of deep thought and spiritual insight. For him, science and faith were not enemies. On the contrary, Lomonosov believed that science was the language through which God revealed the mysteries of creation. Whenever he looked up at the night sky, observing the stars and planets, he didn't see randomness, he saw divine order. In his notes, he once wrote, "Every harmony I see in the universe shows me the wisdom of the Creator." These words reflected the essence of his worldview. For Lomonosov, God was not only the object of prayer, but the intelligence living within the laws of nature. In the 18th century, Europe was divided by debates between science and religion. Many scientists of the time used their discoveries to challenge faith, but Lomonosov chose a different path. He believed that understanding how the universe works only brings us closer to understanding God's design. He wrote, "Science does not oppose faith, it opens the eyes of faith." Unlike many of his contemporaries, Lomonosov rejected blind fanaticism. He argued that true faith comes not from ignorance, but from understanding. In his view, a person rises spiritually not by believing blindly, but by believing with reason, a bold idea for his era, when scientific curiosity was often condemned as heresy. As he worked on his studies in physics and chemistry, Lomonosov saw in the structure of matter the reflection of God's perfect order. When he formulated the law of conservation of matter, he famously said, "Nothing comes from nothing, and nothing disappears into nothing." This is the Creator's perfect order. To Lomonosov, humanity was the continuation of God's creative power. He considered the pursuit of knowledge to be as sacred as prayer itself. Reason, he believed, was the greatest gift God had given to humankind. And failing to use it was like wasting a divine blessing. Throughout his life, Lomonosov remained respectful toward the church. Yet his devotion was directed not toward dogma, but toward the divine wisdom behind creation. He became one of the first Russian thinkers to build a bridge between science and faith. His writings and poems often reference God, creation, and the harmony of the universe. He believed that the purest way to understand God was to study nature itself. If you wish to know God, look at his works. Mikhail Lomonosov's faith strengthened him both spiritually and scientifically. He proved that science and belief are not opposites. They are two forces that complement and enlighten each other. Fact 10. Devoted to science until his last breath. In the spring of 1765, Mikhail Lomonosov was already gravely ill. Years of exhaustion, countless sleepless nights spent in his laboratory, and his relentless dedication to writing and research had taken a toll on his health. Yet he never stopped. Even a few days before his death, he was still working on new scientific notes. At his home in St. Petersburg, surrounded by his friends and students, he passed away quietly. According to his close companions, his final words were, "Continue working for science and for the motherland." Lomonosov's death was a tremendous loss for Russia's world of science and culture. He was not merely a scientist or a poet. He was a visionary who transformed the mindset of an entire nation, opening the doors of education and knowledge to the people. If you enjoyed learning about Mikhail Lomonosov's incredible life, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more amazing stories from history.